It's BS, but it's culturally supported BS. Howdy, folks. Welcome to the Virtue Signal. I'm Alfonso Rachel, or my friends call me Zoe. You can call me Zoe if you want. And that's Bill Whittle. You can call him Wild Bill. Today, as we try to battle against these so-called virtues of the left, I caught wind of a campaign that's going on in Kentucky, and this is from I saw a commercial from what's his name, Charles Booker, and Charles Booker running against Rand Paul, and Charles wants to wear a noose around his neck. Man, he's got the noose on. And basically wants to, vilify Ron Paul as, and of course vilify, I guess, America for lynching. And
he's wearing a noose.
He's wearing a noose, man. That's his superpower. He's wearing a noose like a cape or something. That's his superpower. I'm hangman, Anyway, so he got the noose on, and he's going to try to lay this on Rand Paul, and I guess try to remind Rand folks that Rand Paul opposed the anti-lynching bill that was proposed, held it up, and that's what's going to go out into the culture, and that's what's going to be used to, vilify Rand Paul and vilify Republicans and whatnot. And you want to make sure that you vote for this.
And Kentuckians too, for that matter, yeah.
Yes,
yeah. Good luck with that.
Yeah, and it just might pan out lucky for that. Like I said, politically, as I said before, this may not work out good for him. I'm hoping that this kind of rhetoric doesn't win the day. Unfortunately, it does make cultural damage. But I wanted to get your thoughts. I don't know if you've seen the commercial or not, Bill.
I'll go looking for it.
It's well shot, it's well paced, the lighting looks great, and it's just really kind of draws you into what he's saying. Off the top of your head, without seeing the video, what do you think of these Democrats still using these tactics?
I think he's beclowned himself. When you remember the cultural earthquake that went through the country when Biden and Harris announced that they were proposing anti-lynching legislation, and how you probably remember where you were when you heard the news. It came and went like any other piece of nonsense, It was just like okay. And look, why should we be dismissive of not only dismissive of this, contemptuous of it? Being contemptuous of an anti-lynching law, does that make you contemptuous of lynching? Not for me. My two responses to an anti-lynching law would be, by far the weakest of them would be, when was the last actual lynching? Is this a national emergency that we must address? You and Harris are calling this something that has to happen out on the Rose Garden in the back of the White House, making a big announcement about this. Is this a pressing national issue that we have to deal with? I am genuinely curious to know when the last lynching was. And people will hear me say that and say, aha, you're defending lynching. I'm not. The reason that we don't need an anti-lynching law is because, at least until the last time I checked, the Democrats being in session and so on, there were still laws in this country against first-degree murder. And when you start to see, I've never bought this hate crime thing. I've always considered all crime to be a hate crime.
Sure.
Right? I mean, I don't see how. I don't see how murdering a gay person is any different than murdering a white or a black or whatever person. It's first-degree murder. And to say that, well, this country is the shame of this country is that we've never passed anti-lynching legislation is, to me, responded by, well, we do have anti-first-degree murder legislation. And first-degree murder charges have prevented lynchings for 70 years now, 80, 100, I don't know. Not quite 100, I guess, but it's getting close to that. And so I put this in this. I put the anti-lynching thing in the same category of showboating, that is all that's left to this this clown show that managed to turn up enough ballots overnight, right? It's going to, whatever we can throw sticks against the wall, we're going to go with. they decided after 6 months of intense study that the best way to really intimidate and insult Republicans and to get moderates away from the Republican Party was to refer to the policy as ultra MAGA. And next thing you know is, ultra MAGA hats and ultimate ultra MAGA guys, and the term that they're bringing back now is Christo-fascist, for Christians who are determined to impose Christianity at point of a sword on the rest of the country, that kind of current problem that we've had so much of, lately. And I just want a T-shirt that says, I am a proud ultra MAGA Christo-fascist, because it's absurd on its face. It's just openly absurd on its face. This guy wearing a noose around his neck is beclowning himself for a lot of reasons, so not the least of which is the fact that some people were actually lynched in this country, and that by wearing this and by comparing the current plight in America today to what was going on in the South when Democrats in the Ku Klux Klan and all the rest of those Democrats were lynching black people. Let's just keep saying that because it needs to be said. They were not just Democrats lynching black people or shooting black people or intimidating black people. They were intimidating black Republicans and white Republicans as well. Mm-hmm. Right? That's what it was. It was a terror campaign to restore white supremacy in the South after the Republican Party swept the elections following the Civil War, and it was how the Democrats responded to the federal government saying, no, you don't get to murder black people at will, and you don't get to tell them they can't vote. These are Republican initiatives that were put in place to present racial equality, and the Democrats did what they did 10 years earlier when they left the Union so that they could keep their slaves. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. The guy's a Democrat, I assume, yeah? Mm-hmm. I'm wondering why Rand Paul's not the kind of guy you want to mess with. I think if I was Rand Paul, I would put together a commercial that showed, okay, you want to talk about this? Let's talk about it. Here's a picture of white police guards putting fire hose on black guys that are trying to go to college. Here's a video of white policemen turning police dogs on young black girls who are trying to go to college. The people that released these were Lester Maddox and Bull Connor and George Wallace, all of them prominent Democrats. Mm-hmm. Jim Crow laws were created by Democrats. The Ku Klux Klan was essentially a Democratic street army designed to inspire terror. The Confederacy was when the Democrats left the Union. And I would go right down that road, walk it right up to the present, and say, ironic, isn't it, that this guy is wearing the symbol of what the Democratic Party is around his neck to try and vilify a Republican.
Indeed, man. And he according to him, he's got this history, family history with lynching, as he talks about his uncles were being. It's like, man, I'll bet your uncles were lynched by Democrats. And the thing is, when he does stuff like this, you want to put a noose around your neck. You are
pretty sure I'm going to call BS on that, man. His uncle was lynched, not his great uncle, or
right. He says that his uncles were lynched, and it's like, look, man, that sounds like fairy tale land. But if by chance that did happen, they're most likely Democrats. But it's not like Democrats aren't known for making up things. But
to say the least.
But this is some make believe that does have some real world ramifications that causes problems. See, where he thinks that he's making a statement against, I guess, racist America, making a statement against Republicans or even Rand Paul. It's like, no, man, what you're doing is that you want to make sure that the perception of black folks is that our lot in life is to be strange fruit. That's just what we are, right? That's what you want to make sure that we're seen at. We're perpetually victims. You're a part of this narrative that feels like, every black kid has to have the talk. The talk of when you get pulled over by a police officer. Everybody should know how to conduct themselves on how to be, to conduct themselves, if they get pulled over. But black folks in particular. But see, here's the thing. If you feel like, because that's like a thing in the black community, you got to have the talk with them about how to be pulled over. You're already conditioning the kid to be insecure. You're already conditioning them to make them feel like it's not anybody else doing it, it's you. You're making them feel like, is it a crime to be black? Is there something wrong with me for being black? You are establishing that insecurity about them Okay. And that insecurity comes out when they get pulled over or when how they conduct themselves in the street or how they conduct themselves with each other. And this is all part of the same thing. It's just like you very well said. It's like you're going to wear a symbol. You're going to wear this symbol of what the Democrat Party did and try to vilify Republicans for it. And it's like, you've got this thing that and wait a minute. And by the way, dude, you're voting for you're running as with the party and you're loyal to a party that did all this stuff. You know, and y'all can go through the whole thing of where the party switched side. When are you talking about? Because even Malcolm X, before the so-called party switch that they claim happened like in the late 60s between Goldwater, it didn't happen, between Goldwater or Lee Atwater, whatever they want to try to propose. Even Malcolm X called it up before that stuff happened. Malcolm X like, look, man, if you're putting your vote behind the Democrat Party, you are a political chump and a traitor to your race. What was y'all excuse back then? You had none. You basically sold out for some stiff peanut butter, a block of cheese, and a check. That's what you sold out for. And Democrats suckered you for that. And you turned against the Republican Party. For what? Because of the same stuff, the same tactics that Democrats are doing today? Suckering y'all at being a voter stock and using the same tactic of the devil himself, the devil whose name means the accuser? That's what y'all are going for? So I see stuff like this. But like I was saying earlier, Bill, it's well shot. It's BS, but it's culturally supported BS. And this is what you and I have been trying to, for years, have been trying to, get Republicans to understand this. Yeah, they're still able to do this. They're still doing it. It's 2022 and they're still doing this.
That's where I come down on all this stuff. We just did a show on gay pride and LGBTQ Pride Month and so on. And all of this stuff might have been relevant in the 70s, 50 years ago, that you might have had a case that, maybe that Uber makes a statement saying we're going to treat all of our riders with dignity and respect. This may have been an issue in 1975, maybe, right? So yeah, it's like, this is 2022, dude.
Yeah.
And this perpetuation of victimization is all they've got left now.
Yes. And it's to make yourself feel so sanctimonious and self-righteous. And it's a great political tool when the real struggles, just like you said, maybe like in the early 70s and the 60s, that was a real struggle. We've been done with that for a long time. Is you want to make sure you want to keep yourself as a perpetual victim and the oxymoron of feeling empowered by being a victim, but this narrative they've been using this narrative for a long time. They used it during, the Bush years when they had, footage of, blacks, as you mentioned, being hosed and the dog sicked on them, say, you vote for a Republican. This is what you're going to get. It's like, hello, that was Democrats doing that. Democrat municipality, Democrat state, all Democrats all down the line. Martin Luther King was murdered by a Democrat. And you got these Democrat voters out there, particularly in the black community, letting Democrats literally get away with murder as they still put their votes behind them. But this kind of stuff is the groundwork has been laid in the culture. That's why you can have these Democrats getting away with stuff like this. It's like the stuff that you see Democrats just doing politically, they have the groundwork laid to make that happen where it upholds their policies culturally. And I'm trying to tell, we've been trying to tell Republicans for a long time, you got to lay that groundwork culture. There has to be that cultural representation because you may get your political victory, but it's only as stable as what's reflected in the culture. And those things have to be laid. Now, for Rand Paul, to his credit, it's like, look, man, this so-called anti-lynching bill, which Democrats have the history of filibustering against, by the way, Rand Paul's like, this ain't an anti-lynching bill. What is this? You mean to tell me that a person can go and deface a building and you gonna call that a lynching? That's not a lynching. This is a demeaning to what it is to stop lynching, really. So he's like, look, man, we got to do this better. You really want to stop lynching? And just like you said, Bill, it's murder. You don't need an anti-lynching bill.
Where is the lynching epidemic? I must have missed the memo, man.
Exactly. But it's what Democrats, the thing is, it's an epidemic if you allow Democrats to identify whatever they want to be a lynching. And that's what Rand Paul is coming from. Y'all can't just go and call anything you want a lynching just because it makes you feel uncomfortable. Oh, that made you uncomfortable, so you're going to call it a lynching? No, man, we got to redo this. That's where Rand Paul was
I never
coming
really
from.
thought of that. That's really what it's for. Is if you say something that they don't like, then they'll claim they're being lynched in public, and there's law against that and that kind of thing.
Yes.
So look, I'm going to say something relatively uncontroversial, and then I'll say something that is exceedingly controversial, and I can say something exceedingly controversial because if you're watching the show and you're a member, you're paying us to be able to speak the truth, and if you're not, then somebody else is paying for you to be able to hear the truth. Here's the non-controversial thing about the talk, right? About the talk comes a point when you have to sit down with the black child and say, listen, all right, now that you're able to drive, I have to sit down and explain to you how you avoid getting shot to death if you get pulled over for a broken taillight. What seems to be lost in this is that every white kid gets the talk too. He just doesn't get it as a talk. What I mean by that is, over the course of my childhood, prior to being old enough to drive, riding with my dad or my mom, I guess, I'd been pulled over for it's just virtually impossible to not get pulled over. Maybe you're speeding a little bit, maybe you got a broken taillight and so on. My talk came to me over the course of my entire childhood because when we were pulled over and the policeman walked up, my dad had his hands on the steering wheels. Good morning, officer. What can I do for you? Well, sir, it looks like you were going a little bit fast back there. I may not have been paying attention. Can I see your driver's license? Absolutely, yes, sir. Right? So we learned how to treat policemen with respect from observation, and it was just how we grew up. And you can make the case that a policeman would come to a white car with less hostility or excessive caution than he would with a black car. That'd be true, but he'd also have a reason for it. And so now we get into this feedback loop, right? Where it's a self-perpetuating feedback loop. I'm speaking in gross generalities, but nevertheless, if most white people are taught from birth to be respectful and polite to policemen, activists on the left would say, well, you can get away with that because you haven't been intimidated by policemen, you haven't been selected by policemen, haven't been terrorized by policemen. Okay, maybe that's true, but what the reality of the situation is that when a policeman walks up on a car, he's much more likely to get shot by a black guy than a white guy. And you don't have to like that, but now we're down to the actual problem, right? And this is the thing that no one will talk about. No one will talk about the truth of the problem. And that is that if you are basically saying, like this guy, if you're this guy and you're trying to get elected with a noose around your neck, you got it exactly right. What you're telling black people in America is that police are going to be trying to kill you because of your skin color. And when you point out what the actual statistics are, then you're accused of either being a racist, a white supremacist, or you're accused of excusing police brutality or police prejudice or intimidation. I'm not doing any of those things. What I'm saying is this: if we were to have an all-black police force in this country, right, all-black police force, within a year or two, black policemen would be walking up to white cars with a different attitude than they would be walking up to black cars. And that's going to continue until we get to the cultural issues and we get to the cultural ongoing feedback loop, this ongoing hypnosis and poison that is being generated every generation, just being another launch by clowns like this guy, right? He is perpetuating the most destructive narrative that it's possible to have in this country. And by perpetuating it, let's just follow the logic here, okay? He comes out, he's a representative of the Democratic Party, he's wearing a noose, he's telling black voters that in America now in 2022, there's a danger that any moment now some white guys may just come together and drag me out and hang me from a tree and nobody's going to do anything about it. That's what he's saying, right? Mm. That is the statement he's making, and he knows it. Everybody knows it. Okay, well, is that statement true? No, it's not true. Of course it's not true. It hasn't been true for 57 years. It virtually wasn't true then either, right? So he is basically implanting into both black and white voters this ongoing perpetualization of this divide. Mm-hmm. When the divide is based upon different attitudes towards law enforcement that then create their own results, right?
Yes.
if you're told your whole life as a black kid that the police are going to just take you in and beat you up or murder you, you're more inclined to run from the police when you get arrested, right? This isn't a leap in logic.
Right.
And anybody who's watched Cops or anything else has mostly seen black people about to get handcuffed or arrested make a run for it. Well, they make a run for it because they've been told their entire lives that the police are going to get them or kill them, and they're not going to be treated fairly or whatever. So what happens? Well, in the policeman's point of view, this black suspect ran, and black suspects are more likely to run, and so they will start treating black suspects differently based on what they're experiencing out in the real world today. And the thing just continues and continues and continues. And it's people like this that are the ones who are responsible for it. Because the greatest single failure in American culture in my lifetime has been Barack Obama, who had the opportunity to close the deal, right? He could have closed the deal if he wasn't about democratic policy, if he wasn't about progressivism, needing an enemy and needing to divide people and turn them against each other. Barack Obama could have put race relations problems in this country away. He had the opportunity. He was elected by white people who were determined to show the rest of the people in this country and the rest of the world that this was not a racist country. And this country elected a black president twice. And this person who never went through the civil rights movement, never experienced any prejudice. He grew up on smoking doobies on the beach in Hawaii, for God's sake, and the faintest idea what goes on in the South, like conservatives like Ben Carson and all the rest of them actually experienced. But he could have basically said, folks, look, my election, instead of saying my election is the beginning of the when the sea level stopped rising and all the rest of this Lightbringer stuff. The first thing he did as president was, I remember the first thing he did was some black college professor was arrested for climbing into his own window, right? Somebody reported a black guy climbing into a window of his house. Turned out he lived there and called the cops, and Obama said this is disgraceful and racist. And it's like, somebody's climbing through a window of their neighbor. They don't recognize the guy. They're concerned for their neighbor, right? He could have gotten out there and basically said it's time to heal, but he didn't. He did just the exact opposite. And that's what the modern Democratic Party is. They are the party of grievances.
Yes.
And when you continue to foster grievances, then you will get more grievances. And now I'm going to say the thing that I mentioned earlier about being the most controversial thing, because I've given this a significant amount of thought and did a little bit of the math. I'm bringing this up not to justify anything, not to explain anything. I'm only bringing it up because I think it's important that we have some actual perspective. If we're going to talk about a pandemic and the number of people who die, we want to know what the actual number of people who died from the pandemic were, not who died with it, but from it. And also, we also need to know how many people died of other causes during that same time. That's how you make a rational assessment of what's going on. Every year in America, the number of white people murdered by blacks is significantly higher. It's multiples of the number of black people murdered by whites. There is a white murder surplus in this country, and it happens every year. And I want to know, if you were to take the number of black people that had been lynched, I'd be willing to bet you that the number of white people murdered by black people would equal the total number of lynchings in a year or two. Every year. Now, what am I saying by that? What I'm saying is that this narrative that's being hustled, that white cops are out to murder black people, that white people are out to murder black people, that a black person walking through a white neighborhood is taking their life in their hands, right? That's not how it works. You know and I know, in terms of danger to life and limb, what the possibilities are of a black woman walking through Bel Air versus a white woman walking through Compton at 2 a.m, right? No one talks about this because you're not allowed to talk about it, because it's off the table. But this is what happens when your entire political philosophy is predicated on telling a lie. The reason I bring this stuff up is because I would like to see this problem. It will never be solved, but I would like to see this problem reduced. I'd like to see everybody in this country live free and prosperous and happy lives. And I'd like to live in a colorblind society where none of this matters, where it's absolutely irrelevant to hiring, irrelevant to law enforcement, irrelevant to incarceration rates, and so on. But if you're going to have a black culture that is told on a daily basis that they are not only victims but targets by people like this evil son of a bitch, right? Then you will never address the problem until you point out exactly how big of a lie this guy is telling and why he's telling it.
Indeed, man. And it's that fear that they're constantly pushing is basically what's putting blacks in jeopardy. Then when you respond out of fear, bad things happen. So when you,
that's right.
You know, it's a weird dynamic, Bill, because a lot of in black culture, you know, when you listen to the music and stuff like that, the objective is to be as intimidating as you can possibly be. Right. I'm this, I'm that, and I can do this, you know, and do these harms to you. So you want to
promote the police, right? I mean, there it is. Okay. Yeah. So if that's what you're playing on your stereo when a policeman pulls up, you're going to be shocked that you're treated differently.
Thank you. Right. So it's like you can't have it both ways, where you want to present yourself as this intimidating faction in the culture, and people should respect and fear you. And then, well, how do you think that response is going to be? Well, that's how they're going to treat you, as somebody that's supposed to be feared. But you're telling these same people that they need to go out there and fear the police. Now, I got to say this about, you know, the police. It is true that there has been police brutality. We got it.
No question.
You know, and these police, when they're talking about the Ku Klux Klan, yeah, there were police that were in the Klan, and they did target black people to harass. That's a real thing. And happened to, you know, it happened enough to be a problem. But here's the thing. On the police's end, that's something that y'all might want to clear up. Okay, because a lot of these areas where this is happening, these are Democrat-run areas. Y'all are law enforcement in Democrat-run areas, and y'all are in the union. And the union is a revenue collecting arm of the Democrat Party.
Correct.
So it's like, so when I hear, you know, Democrats saying defund the police, I would love to hear the response from Republicans to say, yeah, let's defund the police. Why don't we start with them unions? Okay, you want to hear the Democrats squeal like a stuck pig? Try that. And as far as the police goes, yeah, you might, that is a big part of why this narrative is sticking on you. Is because you are operating in Democrat-run neighborhoods, and you are paying them dues that are keeping them rich, and they're using that wealth to use you as a sacrificial lamb, right? So, you know, you might want to get out of that.
Yeah, and this is something that the individual police forces bear 100% responsibility for. And I'm extremely sympathetic to the police, not because I'm a white guy, but because it is an extremely difficult job that requires split-second decisions where your life is in danger all the time, right? I have high respect for black policemen, high respect for white policemen. I have contempt for black criminals, and I have contempt for white criminals. This is my racism test, by the way. If you're watching Cops and you see a white cop take down a black criminal and you go, yay, and then you see a black cop take down a white criminal and you go, boo, then you're a racist. If you see the cop taking down the criminal and you say yay both times, then you're not. It's pretty simple, really. But what you find when you run into these cases of policemen who are genuinely dangerous, and I've met a few of them, you find that in most of these cases, the kind of guys who now all of a sudden like in the national spotlight because they did something horrendous, you find out that this guy has had like disciplinary reports that go back like 15 years. You know, 15 years of excessive force, 15 years of complaints and so on. By coincidence, when I started playing Little League Baseball in Key Biscayne, I was randomly assigned. We had 6 teams. They were Crimson was the name of the team, right? Scarlet Red, because we had different colored T-shirts. That was the name of your team. You're blue, you're Scarlet, whatever. And the 2 coaches on Scarlet were these 2 relatively young men, and they would practice sliding into home run by standing just short of home run. And we're talking about 8-year-old kids. You would have to run towards home plate and slide, and they would swing a bat. And if you didn't get under the bat, you get hit in the face. I thought, I don't want to be with these guys. I quit the team that day, and I ended up on a team called Maroon with a great, kind man named Bob Kirkwood, who was the coach, and had a wonderful time. Why am I telling you this story? Well, because one of these guys, Palmer brothers, I think, one of these sadistic lunatics ended up being listed as one of Dade County, Miami-Dade's most deadly cops, 7 out of 10 years. Right? 7 out of 10 years, he was on the list for being the most complained about, the most cited, the most factual evidentiary cases placed against him for excessive brutality and so on. So imagine how surprised I was, right? Now, you can't do anything about the fact that there are sick people out there. And I suppose you can't do anything really about the fact that if you're going to hire a policeman and you don't have any history on them whatsoever, if a guy behaves himself and passes the test, you hire him. But when you find out the police forces have been hiring people and retaining people with these histories of horrific behavior, then you really have to ask yourself, what is the matter with you? What is a badge, man? I'm asking a police officer. I'm speaking now to the head of a police department, right? Who's got bad cops on his payroll, and he knows it, right? What is it that protects you out there? It's a piece of tin, right? It's not bulletproof. It's a piece of tin. And what that tin represents is you are speaking on behalf of all of us. You are there to protect us. And if you are hiring people who are violating that trust and who are degrading confidence in law enforcement rather than increasing it, then all you're doing is reducing this badge of authority to a piece of tin, and you will have nobody to back you up. After these George Floyd things in LA, I live not super far from a 7-Eleven, and I'll often stop there because I get out of here late. I just stop on the way home, pick up something. And I often see policemen there. They're not off duty, but they're not being called anywhere, so they're just kind of hanging out. And especially after the Floyd riots, I just walked over to one of these groups of guys, 3 or 4 guys. I started walking over to them, and I could see them just going like, oh, here we go, And I just said to them, look, I just want you guys to know that you guys do a tough job out there, and that I know everybody's making a lot of noise, but not everybody feels that way. You got a lot of support out here, and you got a lot of people who understand that the job you're doing is tough, and I just wanted to let you know that. I walked back to my car, and these guys, you just like watch them just, oh. So I'm not saying that to signal my virtue. I'm saying that because this attitude of respecting the police comes from a place where I didn't have the police hassling me or persecuting me. But I believe that the reason they didn't hassle me or persecute me was not because I was white, but because I was polite and respectful whenever they'd come up to the car, right? If I ever got arrested and handcuffed, the idea of running or reaching under my seat or something like that would not occur to me. You know why? Because I think I'd have a pretty good chance of getting shot if I did that.
Yes, indeed, man. And I don't know, maybe I'm just lucky in the sense of I haven't really had that problem. Whatever neighborhood I've been walking in, whether they're
it's not luck. So I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's not luck. It's that you are a respectful, kind, intelligent, decent person, and it comes off of you the second people meet you. It's the exact opposite of this kind of, it's the exact opposite. You're confident, you're kind, you don't have a chip on your shoulder, and the reason you haven't had any trouble is because you haven't been looking for any.
I'll take that, man, and thank you. And the sad part of that is that because I don't get this harassment for police for if I want to take a walk in whatever neighborhood, affluent neighborhood or a not so affluent neighborhood, I don't get this pull over. Hey, what are you doing or anything like that? And of course, the answer to that, well, that's because you want to fit in with white folks. You want ideas. So let me get this straight. Because I just mind my own business and I carry myself in a respectful demeanor and all those other things that you guys qualify as white. Somebody who's not threatening or somebody who's got a sense of direction, all that sort of. So you're telling me you got to make up your mind, because on the one hand, if I'm being respectful and carrying myself well and all of a sudden, then I'm trying to be white while trying to accuse white people of being evil and thugs and disrespectful. It's like, which one is it? If you're trying to act good, you're trying to be white. but being white is evil. Wait a minute. That doesn't seem to make any sense. So, but the thing is, you're told you're already cursed for trying to be white. If you just want to be a person who just wants to mind your own business and just do your thing and not bother.
Or succeed in school and get A's and B's or whatever the case may be.
Yes. And so, and this comes from, I guess, you very influential people in the black, even like Farrakhan lecturing his congregation, telling them, you guys think that you're educated. I see some of y'all in here, I'm gonna let you know, by you being educated, the white man's got you. And then he goes further to say, and some of y'all, it may even have your doctorate. You got your doctorate. Well, let me tell you something. Then the white man's definitely got you. And it's like, this is the kind of influence that you want to put out there, that if you try to make something of yourself, the only thing you're trying to make of yourself is make yourself off to be white. That's the kind of influence that we're dealing with. And that comes down to this person carrying a noose around his neck. Is like basically telling black people, this is your lot in life. This is what you are. I represent you. I represent every black person out there who's got a noose around his neck.
Yeah, I'm going to protect you against a threat that doesn't exist.
So it's that kind of stuff. And, even with Obama was, man, what a tool he was. Obama was basically this. We're going to run this black person because if anybody goes against the policies that we're pushing through him, we will discredit them as a racist.
That's exactly.
Now
he was the Marxist. He was the Marxist
yes.
Trojan horse.
Now there's only one reason why this could work, Bill. The only reason why this could work is because you would have to, because they're of course doing this against Republicans. This can only work if Republicans actually abhor racism. That's the only way it can work. Republicans detest racism. They're being gaslighted into sounding like bigots now by Democrats. But when Obama was running, you had Republicans who detested, by and large, virtually all, detested racism. And if you accuse them of being a racism, the first thing they're gonna try to, they don't know. It's like, whoa, man, this is a weird accusation. What do I do about that? No, I'm not a racist. No, Obama, they don't know what to do. Because there's like, dude, why is this still even a thing? So it can only work if Republicans weren't actually racist. That's the only way they could pull this off. And Republicans trying to prove that they're not. So yes, with the majority of the white vote, Obama won. But now we got Democrats still hammering away to where you got a lot of Republicans, particularly who are white, are like, look, man, I'm sick of this. Not a freaking racist. But let me tell you something about this.
That's right. People who voted for Obama twice specifically and this wasn't virtue signaling so much as, no, this is important. I'm going to do this. I don't know anything about this guy, but you know what? Okay, it's time to make it clear that this lie has, to whatever truth it held before, it certainly held some. Now we're gonna put an end to this, and after 8 years of that, and then another 4 years after that, and another 2 years after that, the charges against racism continue to get louder and louder and louder. Mm-hmm. And people who did this are saying, you're right, they're being gaslighted now. Now they're actually becoming. They're actually starting to become. They're not so much becoming racist as they're becoming.
It's fed up. It's just like, look,
they're just sick of it. Yeah, that's right. They're just. You know what? Call me whatever you want. I've had enough of this. I've had enough of this.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the Democrats, the cowards that they are, they push black people out in front of this. And so it's when you have the black representation, the shield that they're using, they're like flipping Palestine, launching missile behind, women and children. And so the Democrats, because, you have the blacks, 13% of the population, that they've managed to maintain that population, put them out in front to take, when Republicans are like, look, man, we're sick of this. And if the first person that on the front line that they see is a black person to talk to that they're saying that they're sick of, Democrats use it. See, you hate black people. It's like, look, it's not about hating black people. It's about these policies that you're putting out there and this narrative that you're forcing on us. Every narrative, whether from immigration to LGBT, you're using black people to do that. No matter what, you're still using black people. You guys don't seem to want to stop using black people.
No, they are pretty used to it by now after 200-300 years.
And that's what, basically Republican voters are calling out, and Democrats are able to take it and make it as racism. And it's really not. It's forced. It's basically like, taking something and put it in an environment that it's really not supposed to be in and forcing it to do something and say, see? It's like, no, see, that's not how that works. But unless, the brilliant Bill Whittle has anything else to add, we will thank.
Just one last thing.
Yes.
And I don't know who you're talking about, but I got something to say. The last time I was out of college has been several years ago. It's been 4 or 5 years ago. I'm not going back. because it's not a college anymore. But I was at an event, and the opposition had been called, so there was a lot of hostility in the room. And after I was finished, didn't talk much, mostly wanted to do questions. Some young black woman stood up and said, "You said that you care more about black people than the Black Lives Matter movement does, and that the whole thing's a fraud." And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." They just laughed. How could you possibly say something like that? And my response was, well, because in 2017, which was the last year we had good data on it, the total number of blacks that were killed by policemen was 4%. And that's 4% including if somebody walks up to a policeman and starts shooting at him and he shoots back, right? 4% total. And any organization that is focused on 4% of the problem and not only ignoring 96% of the problem, but not allowing you to talk about 96% of the problem is not a serious organization. It's a fraud. It's a fraud. It's a scam. And sure enough, they just bought their third or fourth $4 million mansion and hired their brother or their father or their husband at $800,000 a year or whatever, right? But yeah, I mean, there's the data, right? Why am I calling Black Lives Matter a fraud? Well, because your entire movement is about 4% of the total number of black homicides in this country. If you really, really, really are about Black Lives Matter, why don't you get down to where the 96% is? Why don't you start doing something to detoxify these completely democratic murder pits? No, not interested in that. So they are a fraud.
Absolutely, man. A great answer. And I hope that we've provided some decent answers and perspective on this, and can move forward with effective ways to not just, look for a political solution. We need cultural solutions as far as this goes, and representation. So, we hope that you support
moral solutions.
Indeed.
Philosophical solutions.
Solid.
Exactly.
Yes. Solid and sustainable ones. And what I prescribe for that. And we also hope that you take the virtue signal as a prescription, help keep y'all guarded up and inoculated against this virus of false virtue that these liberals have out there. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. For Bill Whittle, I'm Zoe. Virtue Signal. We will see y'all next time.